All right, so we're here. I This is definitely a bit of a change from like the normal things that we discuss together. So this is not going. I don't know. I feel like there's going to be some emo lyrics involved in this conversation, and that is par for the course. But that is not the focus of this. As I just mentioned, like previously in the intro, there has been a lot of requests about. I've been very open but also very vague about the dissolution like of my marriage, and especially now kind of finally being in the space of like dating, especially as a single mom. I wanted to give some space for like those type of conversations, and the reason that I wanted to do it with you, because you are my best friend and I feel like you are the one that knew the most about the ins and outs of my marriage. Like you were the person that like I confided in, and when it was finally over, like you were the first one to know. And I think it would be a really interesting dynamic for us to like unpack this, because clearly you had a completely different view of this than like I did, but also you went through like some of this like similarly, so you were able to like relate in that way. So all right, are you ready for this?
I know, buckle up, right?
As ready as we'll ever be.
I
All right.
guess.
I'm going to start with kind of, I feel like I need to set the tone because I feel like a lot of people that follow me online, I think came into my life at like different like parts of this. So for context, I think I need to give like a brief timeline of like how my like marriage ultimately like happened. So it was very quick. Like it was very quick, and I think it shocked more people in my life than probably it shocked like me. Or I guess we were like equal. So prior to being with my ex Logan, I was in like a relationship with a woman for 10 years, living my life. Everyone thought sure we were going to be the ones that ended together,
Yep.
and life just kind of happened. And so I happened to be in Danville, Virginia, of all places, and my ex-husband would happen to be there as well. And we were there for a protest, and it just kind of was this sparks flew type thing, like, and we ended up getting together like from that. Literally met at that protest, drove back to Mobile, was home for maybe 12 hours, and like we got to see each other. And so met up, and I think it was that next weekend was like basically when he moved in. So it happened very, very quickly. And so this was December 5th. And by that Christmas, he was meeting my family, and we were talking about that we were engaged. So very, very quickly. And it was, I mean, it really was this magical thing. Like it was something that I was not looking for, obviously. And like organizing and being an activist is such a huge part of my life. And so being able to share that, not just like like talking to someone about it, someone that is actively like involved in this. So we organized together. We traveled like literally all over the country doing like mutual aid work, and we both were coming from this from like a faith based like perspective, and so that definitely like or so I thought. And so that definitely like added to just kind of the quickness of everything happening. So then from that, within a year later, we got married. And then so I guess we got married that, well, it was like a little like a year and like a quarter. So like that next April we got married. And then that December is when we ended up conceiving Delia ultimately. And then she was married. I mean, she's married. She was born that August. So 2 years of like a whirlwind. So it happened very quickly.
Yep.
And I feel like, okay, let me back up a little bit. So right before we got married, and I have literally never talked about this ever, and I can already feel like what people's faces are gonna like be like when I say this, because there were signs. There were definitely signs.
There
Um,
always are.
and then looking back, I'm just like, oh, it's just a little speed bump. Like we're good. And I'm just like, no, this was a giant red flag. So everything was actually not sunshine and rainbows like during that period. So we had been together for a little while, and so we were okay. And I want to give the caveat of like saying this of that I am not that traditional person in the sense of that, like at that time, believing that the man is the provider. He has to make all the money. I need
Of
to
course.
be at home and like all these things. So it wasn't a big deal to me that like I was the breadwinner for our relationship because at the time he contributed in all the other ways. Like I was starting to get really sick during the time. This is before I was actually diagnosed with lupus, but I
Mhm.
was starting to have all these issues. So like physically he was taking care of me a lot. Everyone knows I can't cook, so he cooked all of our meals, he kept the house clean, and like it was I felt there was an equal exchange of like us doing things. It was just I was the one bringing the money into the house. And then things started to get a little complicated because suddenly I was like, I'm not in a position to do this anymore. Like physically, my health was really bad, so I wasn't able to like, and I was self-employed, so I wasn't able to hustle like to the extent that I
Yeah.
always have. And now his son was back in our life, so I was taking care of me, him, and his son. So he finally like like went out and got work and at the risk of not, there's a lot of that thing that I want to protect like other people and stuff involved, but there is a period where we ended up breaking up. And there was money that was involved that was taken on his end. And so as a result, I ended up losing my house. Like things were really, really bad. And then he like showed up like a month or so later and was just like, I'm really sorry. I want to give this another chance, blah, blah, all these things. And of course, I was blindsided by this breakup and the money and all the things. So I'm like, okay, let's, give this a chance. We actually took a cross country road trip to California because, of course, like, that just makes sense. And while we were there, we decided to get married. And so as soon as we got back, we got married. And I really thought that was going to be, like
Mhm.
that was what was going to like solidify like things for us. And I feel like once we got married, that was when so there's like that kind of thing. Okay. Once we got married was when this shift like totally happened. So
Mhm.
like loving, caring person that was always there for me. That because I was financially provided in all these other ways, like none of that existed anymore. Um, and there was actually this very hurtful thing that was said to me like once we split up and like got divorced that has always stuck with me that he says it was a joke but I feel like it was real. So a lot of people probably like know this about me of that I waiting until I was married was like very important to me. So I waited until like we were married and stuff, and that was the first time we were physically together. And so I made a joke one day about how like everything shifted once we got married. I was like, you didn't date me anymore. We never went on dates. We
Mhm.
never did like any and he was just like, well, I got to have sex with you. Like, that was all like I wanted. And like, I didn't have to do all of those things anymore. And I feel like, honestly, he said it as a joke, Sarah, but like, I don't know if I ever told you that he said that. Like, but that was what it felt like. It felt like, okay, he finally got what he wanted. So everything just kind of went out the window, like at that point. Um, so again, at the risk of not like dwelling on like the whole like timeline. So that's something we were together for. We were married for 5 years. We were together for 7. There was just a pile up of things. Like there was a lot of abuse, there was a lot of strain being put on me financially without any like support from him. There was no emotional connection and
Mhm.
stuff that was there. There was constantly fighting. And so one day it literally was just kind of the final straw. We got into a fight. It got very, very heated and it got very physical. And that was the first time I kind of like looked back and saw that Delia was kind of witnessing it, and I noticed that she's starting to get older. She knows what's happening right now. And so it was literally, I picked her up and I grabbed her. I literally didn't have shoes on or anything. I grabbed my keys and I grabbed her and my purse and like we just left and never went back. And that was like how things ended. So that's the timeline. And
Yep.
that was about 2.5 years ago. That was January 2 years ago. And so, what I kind of want to pause for a minute there, because I know a lot of the things that I experienced, like paralleled, like your relationship. And so while all of this was happening, you're kind of the only person that I talked to about it. Like
Yeah.
after every fight, me being like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I don't know if I should still, because me coming from this place that really valued marriage, I was like, I'm like, once you're married, that's it. So I'm like, I'm
Right.
in this situation now. I just got to figure out how to like make it work. And so I just kind of want to see like what it was like for you being on the other side of that, of all of those like phone calls when things were pretty bad and like things were getting like scary there for a while. Like what type of, well, I'll let you share like the type of like advice per se that you were like giving me, because I've mentioned this to you before that I think a lot of people don't know how to be a friend to someone that's
Hmm.
going through that. So what was that like for you?
So, well, I guess first I'll say a little bit about why my approach was what it was. So I experienced, my timeline was a little bit longer. My ex and I were together for nearly 13 years by the time that our divorce was finalized. But in a lot of other ways, it followed similar issues. And one thing that I noticed was first, it's not that nobody else saw what was happening to me or had an idea, at least an inkling of what was happening to me. It's that everybody assumed that because I was strong, I had it under control. And so like, they just were like, she's doing her thing. Nobody's going to stop her from doing her thing. There's no point in me saying anything. She's going to do it anyway, which was frankly not the case. Honestly, I think if somebody had been like, hey, you, do a lot of pattern recognition. Can I just say some things to you real quickly and see if you see a pattern here? Then it might have snapped me out earlier. But I know a lot of people were just like, she's strong. She knows what she's doing. She's got it covered. I'm just going to be here. And they thought that just being there was enough. And I get that a lot of people, when they're watching somebody, whether it's themselves and kind of having that out of body experience, like, how did I get here? Or watching a friend, like the thing that they don't know how to do is like how to be there. And what I realized when I was done with all of my stuff, right? Because mine was basically done by the time that you were nearing the end of your relationship. It had been over for, like a year or so as far as concluding the divorce. It had been over for 3 years as far as him leaving. What I realized was that if nobody was going to, physically grab my shoulders and shake me out of it, at least like still plugging in, still being available, still showing up for those conversations and listening would have been something. I noticed a lot of people in my life I just kind of slowly lost connection with because they didn't know, like how to continue to show up, what to say, what to do. And also they were just like, well, you could always come to me, right? But it didn't feel like I could. In fact, my ex made me feel like I couldn't go to anyone, like I couldn't say anything to anyone, because if I did, he convinced me that it would ruin their perception of me and us, like us meaning him and me. And so then they would just ostracize us further. They would cut me out further from their lives. They would be even less in friendship with me, all this other stuff, right? And so like that was very convincing to me. Unfortunately, that played on a fear that the distance that was being created was going to become permanent, that I was really going to lose all my friends and that I really was truly alone in this awful situation, right? So I had that knowledge, and having lived through that when you came to me, and it was hard to listen and to witness somebody going through something that I knew objectively was a dumpster fire. Right. But also my job in that moment was not to convince you. I knew that what you were doing was probably what I was doing, which was processing by talking through it. And I knew you were going to get there at the time that you were ready to get there if somebody would just listen. And I would say that same thing to, people who are going through it, it's sometimes your mind already knows, but it needs to keep going over the evidence and going over the events and going over the feelings. And, you know, that's a lot of grief too, in order to like get everything in order in your mind to be ready to say, I'm really done. And I think that there is, you know, a lot of therapy language gets tossed around these days. A lot of people like to talk about holding space for people. And they like to say that word a lot, and they like to ask for that a lot. And I think the thing that you have to realize in situations like this is that is what holding space looks like. And it will often be uncomfortable for you as the person who is listening. And that does not matter. Eat it. Because the only way the other person's going to get through is if you are steady in your ability to manage your discomfort so that they can put what they need to put into that space.
I think that part is so important because again, like I said, you were the only person that like knew everything that was happening because, and I think there's like this delicate balance because I don't want people to feel that we're saying your friend is in a very dangerous, volatile situation. It's like, oh, but you want to hold space. So like, don't like intervene. Don't say anything. Like obviously use like your God-given brain that you have that like sometimes you may need to like intervene, but like I had situations with other friends that I would just kind of mention, you know, things that were happening, and the immediate thing was to jump to giving me advice, and the advice was always just to leave. And like so I felt like I couldn't communicate, you know. I was like, okay, well, this happens again, I can't say anything because they're like, I told you to leave in the first place. So you were the only person that kind of created this atmosphere where I didn't feel, and a lot of that is on me. Like how I feel is on me, is not on anyone else. But it was the only situation where I didn't feel judged. I didn't feel that like, okay, I stayed, so I deserve this.
Right.
Like you never made me feel that way because you were just listening. And then in situations where like you may have needed to give input, like I asked, and like you would tell me, but it was just the way that also that you would word things. Okay, well, I would have, or like in my situation, this is what happened. Because I think that's the hard part of like holding space for people, is realizing that it's actually not about you and your situation. Their situation, though it may be a few similar things, is actually very, very different. So you just objectively telling someone what they should do is not helpful like often. And I think what was so powerful for me was that's why you were the one that I reached out to the day that I left, because I felt comfortable enough to do that. And then that's when you knew at that point that it's like, okay, so we're done. Like, this is what this looks like. This is what you need to do next. And you were able to give those tells. But I think so many friends are not able to even get to that point because they didn't create this like open environment beforehand where the person like shares with them when they're actually ready to leave. So the whole point is that like there's a time and a space for like what you're sharing. And I feel like that was something that you really like mastered. And I think it did help that you had already, like I said, our timelines just were very much like yours like had just ended. And like while you were, and I will say, and I think I've kind of said this to you a little bit, and I want to make sure that like it's clear. I feel so eternally grateful for like you helping me like navigate through this, because I know I was not a good friend to you like while you were going through it. Like while yours was ending was when I like had the realization of, oh crap, I'm in hell. Like this is not like what I envisioned at all. And I was very consumed like with my own. And so I wish the timeline was a little different because I would have wanted to like be that type of friend for you. But anyway, that's just kind of like how life happened. But I'm really glad that you pointed out like what it actually means to hold space, because I don't think people understand what that means. And they just like to throw around the term because it sounds cool and it's trendy.
Very trendy. It's very trendy. And it's also hard to know if the person that you're approaching as your receptacle has that capacity, right? If this had happened in a different way, I don't know if I would have had that same capacity, or if I would have said like, okay, like, yeah, I'm scraping the bottom of what I've got in my barrel right now. But in this one instance, because I know what this lived experience is like, it's actually very easy for me to have that capacity, right? It's very easy for me to take what you want to, it wasn't info dumping, but it was a lot of it processing, for you to take that processing, put it in this space and hold on to it, because I'd done it all in my own head for, 10 plus years. But I think too, the other thing is that, like, if you haven't done that, if you don't have some way to get yourself to the point where you can get into this headspace, the person who's approaching you in a situation like this, like, I think I would have been completely different. I'm not speaking for everybody else. I think I would have been completely different, because 9 times out of 10, if somebody's got something that's like, they're coming to me and they've got this issue or whatever, like, I am just like, well, why don't you just blank? And it seems very obvious to me, but this is one of those, mind fucks where there is no obvious way out to anybody that's in it. And what worked for one person as far as leaving and their timing of everything is never going to be the same for another person. It's just, it's a much trickier thing than, like, well, my car got repoed or something. Like, it's not just a problem that has a specific set of solutions to it. So I think that if somebody can get themselves into a mind space where they went like, well, what was a situation that I couldn't see the light out of, right? That'll help you be the person who can get into the, space that this person, your friend, whoever is approaching you, needs you to be in order to listen the way that, they need to be heard at that time.
Yeah. And I feel like once you finally get to the point of like, okay, it's over. And, there were many times that I came to you that I was like, I think this is it. Like, I think it's over. Obviously it wasn't. And so finally, when it was, and I'm curious because I've never asked you this either. Was there like something that you knew this was it? Like when I said, because again, I came to you many times and be like, this is it. I'm done. I can't do it anymore. Like, did you believe that this time it was really it, or did you think it was going to be just like everything else?
I will honestly say that I don't recall any one of those times that you approached me saying this is it, feeling like that I disbelieved or did believe. I was just ready for any of them to be either, right? And I was worried. I was concerned on your behalf. Obviously I'm privy to more information than a lot of people. So I knew a lot of the specifics, and there were things that were increasingly concerning to me because of those specifics. But my belief or disbelief had nothing to do with it as far as I was concerned. Like, the only thing that mattered was giving it the time to either go one way or another, and then still being there, right? And I will say, I think because I'm a person, and if you're a close friend of mine, this, sometimes I just will like disappear for several months, and then I'll pop back up. So like, people in my life have given me a lot of time over a lot of random stuff. And have given me no flack if I needed to take that time, and whatever version of me was there when I popped back up again was just taken, and we went with it. So to me, it's very easy then in situations like this to do the same thing. I'm not assuming anything's going to go one direction or another. My mind is not even there. I'm just assuming that I need to be available when you surface for air the next time, and then we'll just take it from there. I hate to like use statistics, but they say leaving an abuser is a lot like addiction. People are going to try multiple times before they actually get out. And it's a lot of that is because that dynamic feeds your brain in the same way an addiction feeds your brain. So from our background that you and I have, we met through a group that was specifically dedicated to working with folks who were in active addiction or, going through other mental health struggles. I knew that the outcome was entirely just going to be predicated on, whatever you were able to break that cycle. I knew you could do it. It was going to happen at some point, but it did not concern me if this was the real time or not. It was just like, okay, let's talk.
And I think that goes back to what you were saying about holding space. And I think because a lot of times we are everything is predicated like on a certain outcome. It's like I'm here to listen and give advice because this is what the outcome is going to be. And so much of like friendship and holding space, which also I also want to name that sometimes the person that is closest to you may not be the person that can hold space for you. You know, it
Mhm.
just worked out for me like in this situation, but often those two people can't like they can't be the same. But yeah, I hope that what people really take away from this is that you can't be attached to any kind of outcome if you're going to hold space for someone. So I want to talk a little bit about healing now, because once again, the way things tend to work with us is that we have like similar experiences, but they happen at different times. And I've been lucky that they usually happen to you first. So then you can just tell me what to do. I already have a guidebook of like what not to do. So it's worked out in my hopefully the ties will turn eventually and I can like return the favor and be the guinea pig for something. Um but I feel like we've come to a lot of the same like a lot of the same feelings, a lot of the same like we've landed on a lot of the same things, but we went about this very different ways. So I'll talk about for me and like my like healing experience. So I once I decided that like I was done, it was literally that December. I took a trip to Mexico,
Yeah.
and Mexico was something that I had like dreamed about for so long. I really wanted this experience, and so when I went, it was this deeply spiritual thing for me.
Mhm.
And it's I literally just floating on like the river one day, and it hits me. I was like, I'm done. Like I was like, I'm done with the
Yep.
marriage. Like I'm leaving. That was how I knew. It wasn't like this thing happened. And so I had made the decision then that I was done. And so when I came home, it was like this one little argument happened, and I already knew I was done. So like I was out. So once we like called it quits, even though it only been like a couple weeks between me making that decision, emotionally, physically, all the things, our marriage had been done for a very, very long
Yeah.
time. So this was just kind of the finality of it of like, okay, no, it's actually done. So this is what my life looks like now. There was not a lot of emotional like ties for me. One thing I did realize that kind of hits you though is these moments that you were just expecting to have someone else there for and not
Mm.
having them was hard. Like, one thing I was not expecting was the moving out of the house. So when we separated, we already were planning on moving out of that house. We already were
Yeah.
like moving somewhere else. And so it just so happens we end up separating. So it was just me by myself. So I never envisioned like packing up like 5 years of our life by myself and moving to this other house. So things like hit me like that. But for the most part, emotionally, I was very detached from it. And I was like, I've been done for a long time. But I still, once the relationship ended, felt like I did not want to I just I feel like I couldn't even entertain the idea of dating someone else.
Mm.
It's one thing having like the small child involved, and that did like for better or worse, like loved her daddy, was like totally a daddy's girl, like did not have a concept of all the things that were happening behind the scenes. And that was honestly, and I recognize that now and I give myself credit for it, was because of me. You know, like
Mhm.
I did not want her to like know any of these things. So I'm transitioning to moving into a new house and then eventually deciding that I'm going to build a new house.
Mhm.
So building a house, helping a child like adjust, trying to figure out what it looks like that I'm still homeschooling my child. I am working full time, also
Right.
probably going to have to take on more work to fully be able to take on things. I'm just like my life just feels like chaos. And also being a hyper independent person, I just felt like I need to figure out how to completely do everything totally by myself. And then I can like have someone in that like adds to that. I was very afraid that I would get into a relationship with someone and then be dependent like on it. So I didn't date. I didn't like entertain the idea or anything. And I'll be honest, I had a lot of resentment because my ex in the 2 year period of us, well, the 1 year, the first year of us being separated, he immediately got with someone else and they got engaged. And then he moved somewhere. And then they split up, and so he got with someone else that he started referring to as his wife online while
Mm-hmm.
still refusing to divorce me. So there were so many feelings like around this where I was just like, I want to, like possibly be with someone and like not fall asleep by myself at night and all these things.
Yep.
But I had all these responsibilities that I recognized, he didn't have. We had zero contact. There's no, he didn't even have to work if he didn't want to. He had a free place to live, no child support, like no emotional things he had to deal with his child, like none of that. So I recognize now with distance from it that I needed
Mm-hmm.
to get all these things in, but it definitely was hard at the time to know how quickly he was in a position to just like move on to all these other people. Um, and I know with you, you did therapy and then you started dating sooner than like I started dating. And I know a lot of from you have mentioned because for you that relationship was done for many, many years before like it actually ended. So just kind of want to talk through, like I kind of explained kind of like my process of like why it took me 2+
Mm-hmm.
years to like start like creating my first dating profile because apparently that's how people date now. Like there's no other options. But
Yep.
like what was your process of like when you decided that you were ready to start dating again?
Well, okay. So I think it's probably important to give a little background coloring in this case. So I had been in therapy by the time that he left for over 7 years. So we had had this very long time where, for better or for worse, even though physically he was technically there for some of the um, sessions, like mentally, emotionally, etc., he was not doing any of the work. I was doing a lot of the work, and I was doing a lot of it in silence, frankly, which really sucked. But I didn't really have a lot of other choices, and in my mind, kind of like you were talking about earlier, it's marriage, so we're here now. So the best I can do is go through this therapy and, get it all put together, right? For myself, if nothing else. So I had already done that. And by the time that he left, um, I first I kind of had to go into survival mode because he left like literally maybe 2 or 3 months after my kid was born.
Yeah.
And for anybody not familiar with my story, this was the beginning of 2020. So we were in the middle of COVID. There was nothing else to do. I had some other personal stuff going on. I needed to find housing by the end of the year. Like everything was just running out from under me as far as rugs getting pulled left and right, right? Like nothing was going right. I couldn't get stable. But eventually, so I didn't date at first, even though I felt immediately ready to be dating. And I was like, whatever, emotionally, I was so detached from that. I thought I was going to at least still have a partner. I thought I was going to at least still have somebody to help raising a child. I thought I was still going to have somebody who was participating in some other aspects of this, but I did not think that there was going to be an emotional connection there anymore. So I was well and past that, and at that point then I was just focusing on how do we have a healthy child, and then how do I start learning how to be a parent for the first time, right? Um so when he then left, it was like, oh, so I'm not even going to have a partner. I'm not even going to have somebody who's showing up for me or for our kid or for anybody else. This is literally just all on me now. And I've got to manage these other, things that are happening around me that have very like imminent deadlines coming up to fix, right? Figuring out our housing because we had just sold our house before our kid was born. And then he stole a bunch of money from me. So, whatever. Like there was a
I
lot
still
to
do.
navigate. Yeah, like they do. Um, there was a lot to navigate. And so once I finally like got settled in my house and everything, I was like, fuck it. Like I know where my head is at. I know how healed I am. I know that I know how to navigate a lot of relational things because I was doing the work of two people in the relationship that just ended for so many years. I know that I'm in a
Mhm.
place where my capacity and everything else is ready to date. I also know that I in partnership, I thrive a lot. And I really wanted that for my life. And I'd lost a lot of years pouring into somebody who wasn't really going to show up in partnership with me, who wasn't really approaching this as relationship, but was approaching this as a, can I dig in the goodie bag? What can I get from you this time? What can I elicit from you? And so I said, okay, well, if he took all my 20s, right? Because he and I met when I was just shy of 20 and I was now 33. I was like, I'm just not going to spend any more time on not finding a person for me who is going to, you know, meet me where I deserve to be met, who's going to show up with the things that I would like to have in relationship. And I was also very aware that there was a huge gap because of how long he and I had been together in terms of how I used to relate to people when I was seeking relationship, into all of the toxic dynamics that I got programmed with during my relationship with him, and how I would actually want to approach things now. And so to me, it just made sense to start dating. And the only unfortunate part about all of this has been that, like, everybody I have encountered has reinforced how hard it is to be two things. One, somebody who has been in an actual long-term relationship. I'm not talking you were with somebody for 4 or 5 years. I'm talking about I was with somebody for 13, and I'm telling you certain things hit different after certain year marks, and you kind of start to learn, hey, some of these times are just not going to be heaven sent. Like, some of these times are just going to be hard, and you learn how to dig in to get through those hard times in a way that a lot of people who are dating have no idea how to do. And the other thing that I've learned is it's hard to be a person who has gone through this many years of therapy and who isn't just using therapy speak when they're approaching relationship with other people. A lot of people have learned the jargon but not learned how to live it. A lot of people want to get there but have not had the practice, and when they have the chance to, they do other things. And so yes, I immediately felt ready for dating. I also immediately discovered that the dating pool is full of a lot of the same people that were around in my 20s too. I didn't lose any time because those people have not grown past dynamics and patterns that they had in their 20s. So unfortunately, like, I didn't actually lose the time I thought I lost, because I don't think I would have been spending it that much differently.
It's hard out there. It's like for people that are listening to this that are married, like, I mean, if you want to leave, leave, girl. Like, I'm not gonna stop you, but also know it's hard out here. Like, so if you can make
Oh
it
yeah,
work, make it. You don't want to start over.
it is very different. You do not want to start over, and I also think that at our age, people just, they really are set. You might have people who've got really bad behavior in their 20s, but they're not, their brains aren't completely fully formed. There might be some adaptability in there. There might be some elasticity in there. They might be wanting to examine themselves and make some changes. Those people are not doing those things now. They are who they were in their 20s, but nothing has changed.
Nothing can change. Nothing can change, and it's so hard because for me, like back for like my dating stuff. So I got into my first serious relationship when I was 13 years old, which had 0 out of 10 do not recommend. I was with the same person all throughout high school, and then once I got to college, I met someone else, and then we were together for it ended up being this 10-year like fiasco thing, and then I got married to Logan. Like, so that has been I in my life where I was single, I was dating, I don't even know what a date is. Like, so to now be making a dating profile, I'm like, what in the F is this? I don't understand. But it was something that finally I kind of like did some work with myself and realized that, like, as much as I kept saying I'm not afraid of this, like, I think I was afraid. And that was why I tried to like kind of use my kid honestly as an excuse of like, I got this kid, I gotta take care of her, I can't like whatever. And it's like, no, I think I was like scared because I've never done this before, since I'm 36 now, and I've been in serious relationships since I was 13 years old. you know? So I finally, at the end of last year was when I, sitting at powwow, made a dating profile. And then nothing really came of it, but I ended up like kind of starting to connect on a different level with someone in my community. And it quickly kind of became this thing, which you know how this whole thing unraveled. But like one thing that I felt was really missing from my relationship with Logan was like the cultural connection. So, for context, like I feel very strongly about being with a person of color. I've always like felt that way, and so my ex is Porch Creek and Filipino. But one thing that I did not learn, and this was a lot of my own growth and development, was that just being with a person of color isn't enough. Like there's still like layers and stuff like of that. And so being with someone that wasn't black and then also being with someone that was native but had zero connection to that side was very, very hard and very limiting for me. So in my head, I was like, this is one thing I was really missing. So if I get with someone else, this is all that matters, you know? Like I just want to make sure I have these things. And so met someone that also was black and native and like was very, very involved in culture. We like I was a dancer, he was a drummer, like we're in the same community. Everything was like on paper, it seemed like really great. And then I quickly caught myself, and this is something that has really like terrified me. And I haven't also actually shared this with you because this has been part of my like processing and stuff lately. Um, so something ended up happening that kind of ended that thing. I don't even want to. I mean, it technically wasn't even a relationship, so I don't even know what to call it. But like something happened to like force that to end. That was out of like both of our control, and I honestly am very glad that it did because I realized that I would have married him. You know, like I would have married him and I would have been absolutely miserable because whereas we had this cultural connection, that was all we had. Like there was nothing else there. I was miserable
Mm,
in every way. He was making a lot of bad life choices, all these
yep.
things, but like I got so like focused in my head. And I think this is kind of something that happens like once you've been married and you're not married anymore, is you go one of two ways of like, oh, I never want to be married again, or like I need to be married again right this second. So I just need to find like, okay, what was missing in this last relationship? It was money and cultural connection. This person has money and cultural connection. So we're going for it, but like not realizing there's more to me like than that. So I would have been in another terrible situation. So thankfully like that thing was kind of like forced to end, and then just kind of organically this thing has been developing, and like and I don't know what's going to like happen with it, but I think for the first time in my life I am kind of, I don't want to say just freely dating because you know that is just not me. And that's not my personality. I have a 5 year plan, and like we gotta stay on the plan. And also I'm just not. I think everyone's built differently. I'm just not that person. I do want to be married again, and I do
Hmm.
want to like have more kids. I want a family. I want all these things. So there are certain things that I know need to happen to get to that point. But I'm
Right.
also recognizing about myself that like one thing that has been missing from all of this was like how I feel and how like someone makes me feel. Like my thing has been very checklist oriented of like,
Hmm.
are they a good husband? Are they like a good father? But like none of that was about how I felt in the situation. And I think like now meeting someone that honestly does not check any of the boxes for me of things that I wanted,
Oh,
and
really?
someone that like we're gonna have to talk about this a little bit more off the podcast. But like they're not really any of those boxes and stuff for me of things that I was like, this has to happen with the
Yeah.
person that like I marry. But like I also like I've never been treated this the way he treats me. I've never felt the way I feel when I'm with him. Like I've
Mm,
never like me because I was very much like, okay, we're just gonna get it all out in the beginning. Let me tell you every terrible thing that's ever happened to me. So if you want to leave, you can leave now. Like, and I'm not wasting because I only can have childcare every once in a while, so I don't want to waste like childcare if you're just gonna leave.
Yep.
So, and it was like seeing his reaction to things, and like last night there was like this moment where he was just like, and it was just a very matter of fact thing of him being like, I don't think you've ever been loved, and then like him holding me like I see, and it was just, it's been things like that where I've always, we always joke around and like we send real stuff all the time, like I'm the cold black heart friend. I'm like, ugh,
Mm-hmm.
don't tell me, don't send me a card, flowers. Oh, they're gonna die. Like I just don't. I'm not this person. But like I think I convinced myself that I was not this person because I'd never experienced it. And because
Mm.
I knew that the person I was married to was never going to do those things for me. Like I've never gotten flowers from a guy before. I've never like just been held. I've never like, any of those. I've never had anyone make a playlist for me. Like I've never, like any of that. And I convinced myself that I just didn't want those things because I didn't want to be
Mm.
disappointed and knowing I would never get it for my marriage. And so like now like experiencing that, I'm like, oh, actually this doesn't make me vomit. This is actually kind of nice and it's kind of sweet. And so it's been this like weird transition for me of realizing that I don't want to say this checklist isn't important because I know that I do want to be married and I know things that I need for a marriage to like work. And a lot of that is around like finances.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think you and I both have been in this situation where we realize that sometimes we are penalized for being like successful like in our like careers, and like especially when it's with like, and I'm learning this because dating men is a whole new thing to me, and I'm like, wow, let me like not but like especially when it is that like cis man cis woman like dynamic of like me being like, you're enjoying the benefits of like my success, but like
Mm-hmm.
you still are treating me some type of way because I have this success. And I just, which someone could prove me wrong, like maybe it's just been like the wrong people I've been with. But I kind of feel like if someone doesn't have that same level of success, there's going to be that resentment. And I'm at this point where I find like I'm not dumbing myself down. Like I'm not, like I am a smart person. I am successful. I do run my own business. I do all these things, and I'm not going to dull that because it makes you feel some type of way. And I worry that if I'm ever with someone that also doesn't have all those things, then there's going to be resentment like on my end. And so, I mean, on their end, like towards me. And so I don't know if
Yeah.
that's a real thing. I don't know if you have it, because I know also some of the people that you've dated have not had those same things like as you. And so I don't know if that dynamic affected your relationship, or if that is just a growth thing where like if they are mature and evolved, it doesn't matter, they're still going to celebrate you even if you don't have those things. Because I kind of feel like that's where I'm at now, like with this guy, but I don't know, it's too soon to tell.
Um, yeah, so I will say that I very often do have some of the similar internalized feelings you have about the impact of my success. The amount of times that somebody that I have dated has said something like, oh, what was the most recent one? You should be really proud that you got where you got with just having an undergraduate degree. And it's like, well, okay, I am proud, but also like you realize I'm real smart, right? Like you like the my undergraduate degree has nothing to do with what I do in life. First of all, for those who don't know, I have an English degree and I work in like tech finance. Okay, so like my the degree really has absolutely nothing to do with any of this. And if you think that that was some sort of measure of what I should be able to accomplish and that it's some sort of wow thing, then you're going to A, really have your socks knocked off by the fact that it has nothing to do with what I've been able to accomplish. And also, that like this is not just me in this area of my life. Okay, the amount of stuff that I have managed And I won't say entirely by myself, right? We all have some community around us. We have friends, we have whatever, right? I haven't managed everything entirely by myself, but like there's been a lot of leaps that I have taken that are just because I'm really, really capable and I'm really, really smart and I really, really put the work in. Um,
Mhm.
but I will say that even though I have those things that are internalized in me about how like I do this much work, I guess I've learned a lot of different things through my dating because I've been doing it just a little bit longer than you. Not actually that much longer than you. In this case, it was really interesting because like by the time that you got to the end of your relationship, right? I had been done for a little bit. I had kind of been putting my foot in the dating pool, but I wasn't like really dating anybody. I was just kind of like seeing a couple people, right? I definitely wasn't like exclusive with anybody, that's for sure. So like by the time
Mhm.
you started really seriously dating, I had finally started to feel like I'd kind of found some footing, right? In some more serious dating. And I will say that I have learned that it doesn't like I love certain things. I love when people show up with flowers for me. I love when people are considerate. I love when people, take things off my plate, acts of service style stuff because they know I have so much stuff on my plate. I love those things, but I have learned that people can show up and be doing those things and still fail the relationship. And I've watched
Mhm.
it happen, okay? I've watched somebody who always made plans and always scheduled the dates and always brought me flowers and always remembered significant dates and got me gifts and always did all of those things, but was still emotionally unstable enough to the point where they
Yeah.
couldn't regulate. And I knew that I would end up mothering them through regulation for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And I had one very specific boundary. And as soon as it was crossed, I walked.
Mhm.
And after that person, I thought that I had found somebody that was really uh, this is who we talked about before we started this. I thought I had found somebody who had really finally hit the nail on the head, and I was willing to be like, okay, so I have learned that somebody who pays for all the dates and somebody who buys all the flowers and who does all these things is not the most important thing. I've learned that it's somebody who's done the other work. I also want those other things, but I'm going to not worry too much about that stuff because I've had that now and I know what it feels like and I know I like it, but I just don't need to start there. That's not the first bar that I'm reaching for anymore. The first bar that I'm reaching for now is, has your inner work gotten you to the depth where you can live it and not just speak to it? And I
Right.
have learned that as soon as you want to hold somebody accountable for their actions, right? Whenever you're not just showing up with unending grace and kindness, because I will start there. I will always start there. It does not actually take a lot to earn me starting at grace and kindness with you. I will go there hard to start with. But as soon as it's time for the gloves to come off, I promise you that the directness that with you experienced my grace and kindness with is also going to be the directness you get my confrontation with. And that does not mean I
Mhm.
am mean, but it means I will not mince words and I will expect you to step up to the plate. And if you are not
Yeah.
able to do that, then I will point it out. And you can try and distract me. You can try and throw up, well, I think you're saying this. No, I haven't said that. This is what I'm saying. Focus here now, please. And I feel like the teacher sometimes. I'm like snapping my fingers in sort of the class and I'm saying, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. Because I am telling you that I want to enjoy all of that abundance that people can bring. But the dollar signs and everything else, I would like to see that after I see the other part. So for
Yeah.
me, it is a yes and.
I appreciate that so much. Like, I think I'm going to take that perspective on things because I have been really racking my brain with that of like, I'm not a very idealistic person, as you know. And so I do feel like, okay, yeah, this is nice, but also we have bills. We have a child, like this would be like our child together. And like, I want to have another child, like all these things they require money. They require a certain level of like commitment and stability. And also things where I think for me, I always have in the back of my head of that, which I've told you and a few other friends, because like people have been like concerned, but like I've got one more year in me of pushing as hard like as I've been, and like my body cannot do it anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd always say end of this year, but I'm giving myself to next summer. So that means if I'm going to have a partner, like I'm going to need them to step up. So I am very nervous about being like, okay, I'm going to create something, where like all of that responsibility is like on me. And
Yep.
like, but also, like I said, I think it's really powerful the way that like you framed it of like, this is something that is very important to me, but also I've had this, like I did with the last like guy that we shared the culture and stuff. Like I didn't have to worry about anything. And that was a first for me. I was like, wait, you even just like stuff for like buying me a Sonic slush? I usually would have to cash out Logan like money to buy my slush for me and bring it back,
Yep.
So it was just like things where never having to worry about money and having that cultural connection, but then like that kind of exploded like for me, and I realized that there was nothing else there. So I cannot build a new relationship like on that. But I also, again, very realistic of like, okay, but these things have to happen though. So, but I think it's okay to like start off with like, okay, we have all these other things. Let's like make that a very solid like foundation. But then we got to figure out, beyond this, if this is going to be a serious thing, and like if marriage is ever going to get to like be a part of the common. God, I hope he's not listening to this. I'm not trying to get married tomorrow if he ever listens.
Right.
Like, but like, if that ever is a thing, there are certain things that have to be like in place first. And I think it's very beautiful to get to a point where you like, I'm so stuck on that. Like, I really appreciate that, of that you don't have to choose. And I think so much of like, maybe that's the trauma that I feel like both of us had like in our marriage, is like you always had to choose something. It's like, if I'm gonna have this, then
Yes.
that means I can have this. And I
Yes.
recognize that I'm still carrying that on in like some ways. And it's like, no, I can have both. It doesn't have to be at the same time, but I can have both. And it's okay to want that. Like, it's okay to, I feel like for the first time, again, at almost 40, the first time in my life, I'm recognizing that it is okay for me to have desires and for me to want things. And like,
Mm-hmm.
especially within, because I had a very idea of that marriage is a commit, which I do feel that marriage is a commitment, but like that's what all it was. Like, marriage is a commitment that you make. So you're just committed to this and y'all figure it out and you work it out. It doesn't matter what you want. It doesn't matter what you like. Like, this is the
Right.
commitment of marriage. And I don't feel like, even for me, that I approach this from a religious perspective, I don't think that's what God wants for any of us. It's
No.
like, to commitment but be miserable. Like, no, this was supposed to be like a beautiful thing. And I think I constantly have to remind myself of that. I totally feel that we're gonna have to do a part two like of this, where we're unpacking the F boys that we have been dating,
They're
and
everywhere.
just what life is like. I think I'm gonna have to do like a green screen and put up well, I'll block out their pictures. I'm not trying to get sued, but like the profiles of people that are matching with me, and being like, what am I doing wrong that you think I would be interested in you? Like, things where, I mean, it's cool. I respect everyone's life and whatever. Like, most of my friends are felons, but they're also like, we're not putting that as the headline in our like profile. Like, that was someone the other day was like felon, and I'm like, what? This is your
Yeah.
opener? Like, I don't. And like, one thing too, my profile, I very clearly, in big bold letters, I say no Zionists, no military, no cops. Every single person
Obviously.
is the way where I live. This is very common. 90% of the people that match with me are cops or are in the military. And that already tells me one of two things. One, you don't read or know how to read. And then two, like, it doesn't matter to you. Like, I've already
Yes.
set a boundary, and you have crossed, like, before even like having a conversation with me, you have already crossed this boundary that I set. And
Yes.
so I'm just like, I can't, like, it's hard. And it's so hard out there. Like, and I'm like gonna just put it out there in the universe that like, hopefully things can work out with like situations that are happening now, because I can't do this much longer, Sarah. Like, it is scary out there. I mean, I've always told you, just won't give into it. I have been like, hey, listen, we don't need men. We co-parent really well together. Our kids love each other. They're very close in age. Like, you want to be somewhere where there's land? I live in Alabama. Like, there's no, you can't get more land than that. Like, boo, we can make this work. But yeah, because if this doesn't work out, this guy, I'm gonna start pushing that again. Be like, listen, what do you need from me? You said you want success. I'm successful. I mean, granted, we're in very different tax brackets, but I'm still pretty successful, like on my own. Um, don't know if you want more kids, but I'm semi fertile. Like I'm like I'm fun size, so that could be fun. Like I just feel like we can talk about this some more because yeah, these dating apps are not it. They're not it. And I think that's part of the conversation too for like another part of the podcast is like as single moms, like with careers, like and as single moms that don't have, because a lot of people like they have a co-parent, like we are single moms all the time. Like what does
Yeah.
dating look like for us? Like and especially outside, how are you meeting someone outside of an app? Like and then if you get to that point, like I mean, because there are situations where I wish that I didn't want to bring people around my kid until we're like engaged. But then the reality is that then I would never see you, like, because I don't have like that type of like support. So I think there's so much that like single moms have to like
Mm-hmm.
navigate and that people just don't know unless they're in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, I will say a couple things. First, the thing that I have been seeing pop up for me a lot lately is just reminders and like literally like all over, like feeds online, all kinds of stuff, right? That the universe is not on a budget. So the reason why I will now say yes and in terms of my wants, it's not a checklist, it's just some minimums, is the same thing I will say to you. Yes and is just the bare minimum. The universe is waiting to write a check, right? So like you can put whatever you want on that list. It doesn't have to be a checklist. It can be guidelines. Some things won't work 100%, some things will, but I think that there's some really key things and you can just keep adding to that list and it can be all of it, and you and I and whoever else deserves everything on that list as long as you are a person showing up with those things on that list. Um,
Yeah.
because you don't get abundance without bringing abundance. Sorry, you can't show up with your hat in your hand and expect somebody to deliver everything to you. You need to show up too. But
Mhm.
yeah, other than that, I have, as of just today, because they tell you that it's a random day when you finally go, oh, that was all I needed. I'm disconnected now, right? Today was one of
Yep.
those random days for me. And I will tell you that I actually no longer feel a lot of lingering anything about a lot of these things, either not working or about my, my ex-husband who left me or whatever, because every single, I'm probably going to jinx it saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Every single time somebody has left me the way that they have left me, what has come around as the comeuppance has been something I've been glad to be clear of.
Mhm.
I've been very glad to be clear of a lot of it.
Say this so often that like I was like I am a very religious spiritual like person. I feel like I have this close connection with God even though a lot of people try to think that like I don't. But like I was like and God does not play about me. So if like I don't have I mean I enjoy being petty. I enjoy like hurting people, but like I don't have to if I don't want to because like if you do the way that like God and the ancestors like will always protect me from like people that like will cause me harm is like there's not even we can do a whole 10 podcasts just about all the things that have like happened in
Oh,
my
I
life.
know. Don't I know
And
it? Yeah.
like I'm just like okay, but I think so often we have to remember that though, like so often we're caught up in our own like feelings about a situation and like we see something so clearly of like oh this was supposed to work, I don't understand like what is wrong with me, blah 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 and all those things, and obviously God, spirit, creator, ancestors, whatever you want to call it, they see the large, and I know it sounds so cliche and so cheesy, but they see the larger picture. And it's like, yeah, you don't see what is like literally right there on the other side that they're pulling you away from. And I believe that. Like I have to believe that. That there is some sort of divine protection out there. And I'm grateful for it. Because I know my dumb self is
Yep.
not even making this totally on my own. So
Yeah, no, it is never a loss. It is a realignment. And I mean, I have loved a lot of people, and this is not romantic relationships exclusively. I have loved a lot of people who I needed to get the fuck away from.
Mhm. Girl, I
And
remember.
that just that just is what it is. I mean, I can love you and I can recognize that you need to be loved from a distance. You know, um I can see all of your things where you could rise to a certain level, and if you choose not to take those steps to get there, then I do not have to choose to walk beside you anymore.
Yeah,
And
just
I'm okay with that. Like that's it. That's the end for me. That's a full sentence. Like, and
yeah.
I have never not had somebody come back to me and say, "Oh God, I didn't I made this big mistake." I hope there's a lesson there because I've learned mine. But I'm okay with continuing to date because I keep getting things out of it that tell me that I am in the right place doing the right things, and somebody is going to get there to meet both of us at some point. Because the other thing that I love about all of this is, like, at least for me personally, like, I've never felt like there's like soulmates necessarily. I think that there are a lot of people in the world who can love a lot of different people. And I think the one that you want to choose is the one who's able to cross your path and continue to show up and meet you where your needs are, obviously. And you're going to have a million opportunities to do that. It's just really annoying to do it as a single mom where, a babysitter costs you however much, and, like, all these other things cost you a lot more. Like, that makes me laugh every time too, when somebody's like, well, I'm getting the bill. Okay, well, my babysitting cost more than this bill, so I guess thanks for that. But, like, it's,
Yeah,
don't
really
say it
don't
like it's some big thing.
narrow it down, honestly. Of like, I don't think a lot of men that either don't have kids or they don't have their kids full time understand what this is really like, and
Yep.
especially for me because I've never had a babysitter. The only person I've ever left my kid with ever is my mom, and she still works all the things. So, like, if she can't keep her for a little bit, like, I don't have a choice. And so I need whoever my partner is to understand that, like, and again, it is totally my choice. This is just the way that I choose to parent. This is how I am, like, as a
Yep.
mom. And so it's not going to always be like, no, I'm never going to be available to go on an overnight excursion to wherever.
Right.
Like, that's my life is not set up that way. And if you're wanting to be with me, like, this is just how it is. So
Yes.
I don't even want to set those unrealistic expectations. We're like, oh, well, you did it when we were dating, like, because that's just is not how my life is going to be. Like, and I'm not saying, because I do want to have that balance, because one thing that my ex brought up at the end of our marriage and stuff also was that how he felt that I abandoned him, that everything was just about me, like, being a mom. And whereas I do feel that I did. Like, I mean, I had very, very bad postpartum anxiety. And so that caused me to be very, very consumed with, like, being a mom, because I was always terrified something was going to happen if I wasn't the one that was physically there. Um, and also, though, it doesn't have to be a but, it's a, and also, he was not showing up as a dad. So, and like, you got to
Yep.
give me something here if you want me. So I can recognize that I did become very consumed by this. And also, though, if you would have been more present, then I wouldn't have. So that's something that I do want to keep in my head, of that I recognize that I do kind of have a very, like, some people think it's extreme. Like, I do have a very, like, attached, like, a parenting style, and I do need to just maneuver things, like, a little bit more if I want to bring someone else into that, which I am willing to do, but to a certain extent. Like, I am a very firm believer that my kid is only going to be a kid for so long. Like, if you and I are going to be
Mm-hmm.
together, we're going to be together for the rest of our lives. I only have this period with my kid, and so I want to, like, be present. And so I need someone else that is on board with that, because Delia does not have a father per se, like, in her life.
Right.
And so whoever I'm with, whether it's she gets another mom or she gets another dad, like this is going to be the only like co-parent that she has. And so I want you to be, just as invested. This is not a separate thing like, oh, this is my kid. Like, no, this is our family. And so I
Yes.
think a lot that goes into that, of people needing to recognize that from the beginning. Like, I'm not trying to scare people off like on the first date, but it's also a thing of like, I don't want to waste anyone's time either. I want to be like, this is what I'm looking for. It doesn't have to be next week, but I am dating with purpose. Like, I want to be married. I want
Yeah.
to, raise my kid. I want to have another kid. I want a family. If this is not ultimately your goal, then like, we don't even have to like sit here, with this dinner. So but yeah, so I feel like we've we've rambled a lot here. I do want to like bring you back, and we do a part two to just really talk about like dating, because I think that's like a whole thing like in itself, and like unpacking the things that we've learned through dating, because I think there is something to be said about dating like post divorce. I think it's
Yeah.
very obvious that we approach this very differently than people that have never been married before, and especially coming out of divorce that was, or coming out of a marriage that was as toxic as ours.
Mm-hmm.
Even have so much healing that like we've done, is not like we're carrying like baggage, but that trauma did kind of change who we are as a person, and so we are going to approach life a lot differently than we
Yeah.
did before like this marriage. And I think that's important for people to understand. But thank you for allowing me to unpack this, and giving people a glimpse into what the past few years have been like, and I hope that people are able to relate, and like understand that like they're not, this is like, I don't think our stories are unique. I think so many people have experienced this, and they
Mm-hmm.
may not had the words to put to things. And so I think, especially from your perspective, that you gave the correct words for a lot of things even I had been feeling and didn't know how to like process. So I'm hoping that that's what people can get from this. And then also, I think is a thing where I think, unfortunately, part of being like a content creator and having this like large online presence and all these things, of that I am not so much of a put my highlight reel out there type of person. But so people know like things kind of are not rainbows and sunshine, but it's still the highlight reel of things that are not rainbow and sunshine. And so
Yes.
I hope this allows people just like a deeper glimpse into like why I am the way that I am. So anyway, appreciate you being able to have this conversation with me.
Yeah, of course. And I hope, if anybody is listening to this, that like there's some sort of a glimpse into what you can look like and sound like and feel like when you're on the other side of it, right? Because I think that it's really hard to imagine that like when you're in the thick of things. So like, yeah, that we had this very tumultuous experience that was very similar, you and I, in our marriages. And I'm the opposite of you. I don't have a whole huge online presence, but if there is anything that I can put out there, it for sure would, for me, be something like that. Like, there is a life afterwards, and it's still not all sunshine and rainbows, but at least it's not filled with that particular pain and chaos. Like, nothing's perfect, but on the other side, there's a lot to live for. So, yeah, I hope you find your person to hold space for you. I hope you find your person to listen. I hope that, once you take the chance to do that, your needs are met and you're able to walk away.
Halito and salams, y'all. Asada here, single mama, community organizer, entrepreneur, and your resident elder emo. For so long, I chased the perfect outcome and missed the magic in the mess, until one day, life just kind of hit me with a holy reality check. Now, I'm learning to find beauty in chaos, those dirt under your fingernail moments. And that's what Watching the Bloom is about, embracing growth one petal at a time. If today's episode resonated with you, hit subscribe on your favorite platforms, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who's blooming too. You can keep up with me on all social media at Asada Blooms and on my website at asadablooms.com. I'll see y'all next time as we dig deeper, grow together, and bloom beautifully, mess and all.